Chapter 03, The Place Where Brahman Blinks. The clouds over Amsterdam were thick with the kind of grey that made students forget the shape of the sun. The wind carried no urgency, yet everything felt on edge, as if the city's breath had momentarily caught in its throat. Inside a small seminar room tucked into the older wing of the university, where they still used chalkboards that smelled faintly of forgotten hands, a guest lecture was about to begin. The name on the white flyer taped outside the room read, Visiting Faculty Lecture, Rishi Van Mukha, on Consciousness and the Shape of Time. The students, of course, snickered. A man with a long grey beard in an orange shawl wasn't what they expected in a lecture hall that usually echoed with critical theory and neuroscience. Else had only come because Bastian begged her, saying it would be a trippy break from thesis drafting. Johannes, hungover but curious, slouched beside her. They expected anecdotes, mantras, a bit of cultural mystique, maybe even something performative, but the man who stood before them was not performing. He was remembering. The Rishi and the thread. Rishi Van Mukha didn't speak like a guru. He spoke like someone who had forgotten the need to impress. He didn't waste words. When he began, he said, There are places where even Brahman is not Brahman. Places where the map ends and the echo begins to speak back. You call these black holes, we call it Kalagraha. The room fell still, not because they understood, but because something old stirred beneath the syllables. Else leaned forward. She had heard that word before, but not here, not in this life. The forgotten disposal of Brahman. Rishi Van Mukha continued, gently pacing. When Brahman creates, it does not always create with clarity. There are flinches, thoughts of destruction, doubt, entropy, isolation. These are not evil, but unmanifested error, and they must be put somewhere. So in silence, Brahman began to set these thoughts aside. Not destroy them, just store them. Like you hide dreams you cannot process. He paused, touching the chalk in his hand, but not writing. But thought is never empty. Thought accumulates. Over time, these discarded strands, the sadness, the rage, the shadows of cosmic hesitations, gathered mass. And from them, an Atman was born, a soul with no original purpose, only origin. That being is Kalagraha, the godless space. One student raised a hand, trying to sound academic. Sir, so you mean it's a demon, or some kind of shadow entity? The Rishi looked at him and smiled faintly. It is not demon, it is not deity, it is the place that remembers what God was ashamed to think. A stunned silence, he continued. And over cycles, Kalagraha did what any being with awareness does. It shaped itself. It made rules. It defined time within its own logic. Not the yugas, not the calendars of men, not the ticking of stars. Kalagraha became a realm, and within that realm, even gods can be caught. Once inside, no god can act as god. They must obey the laws of the chant. They must pass through Kalagraha, not over it, not around it. Else was no longer breathing properly. There was something clawing gently inside her ribs, a sound like a hum heard through water. The Rishi stopped speaking for a moment. He looked at her, and only her. You've heard this before, haven't you? It wasn't a question. The class turned. She stiffened. I don't think so, she stammered. He smiled gently. Not with ears. Then he said something she didn't understand, in a language that felt like it bled from the roots of fire. You were meant to hear the rest. The warning unfolds. He turned back to the room. There are chants, old ones, not to summon gods, but to open pathways. If spoken with right intent and wrong heart, they can reveal Kalagraha, not to visit, but to be pulled in. The students were no longer amused. Bastian, nervous, scribbled the word down. Johannes, silent now, was oddly pale. You think the universe is predictable, Van Mukha said. It is not, because it has a wound, and that wound has a soul. The fall of theories. The lecture ended without further explanation. No slides, no summary, only a sentence chalked on the board just before he left. Kalagraha is not evil. Kalagraha is what remains when light refuses to hold its own shadow. Else walked out last. As she passed through the threshold of the classroom door, she felt it pressure, soft but vast, like an eye that had just noticed her and was now remembering. After the Rishi's lecture in the human world, somewhere beyond form, in the space where gods meet thought before they meet time. There is no air here, there is no sky, There is only presence, and in it, two seated forms, neither radiant nor shadowed, only still. Mahadeva, Narayana, Shiva and Vishnu, no thrones, no devotees, no music of heavens, only the weight of knowing and the gravity of what returns when silence is ignored too long. A ripple, barely visible, passed through the space between them. Vishnu's eyes remained closed, but he knew. The Rishi has spoken. Shiva didn't nod, didn't blink. To her, Vishnu's fingers twitched faintly against his knee, a single shift. She was always meant to hear. She heard it long ago. This time she remembered it. Shiva's voice came next, not from his lips, but from that place between exhale and language. We had buried it in deep sleep. No sleep is dreamless, Vishnu replied. A pause. Then, we made no vow that Kalagraha should never wake, said Shiva. Only that we would not be the ones to wake it, Vishnu returned. That sentence hung heavy, a vow betrayed by circumstance. A curl of blue ash passed between them. Shiva took it in hand and let it scatter like memory. How long until he knows? He already does, Vishnu said. He remembers differently than we do, not in time, but in wound. Shiva exhaled slowly. The wound was mine. But it bled into all. The silence that followed was not uncomfortable. It was precise, surgical in what it left unsaid. Then Shiva spoke again. They will chant, they always do, even when we say not to, especially then. Vishnu's eyes finally opened, dark, calm, unfathomable. The chant is not the danger, he said. The meaning behind it is. Kalagraha is not awoken by words, but by what they try to suppress. They sat, not discussing what should be done, because they both knew. Nothing can be done. Kalagraha was not a being they could banish. He was a place created from their own discarded truths. They did not fear him. They feared what they had left inside him. Finally, Shiva spoke again softly. Do you think she will survive it? Vishnu closed his eyes once more. That depends. On whether she remembers who she was before we forgot what we are. They did not pray. They did not weep. But somewhere beyond the edge of form, a small corner of the universe. End of chapter 03.1, That Which Cannot Be Undone.